have such sights to show you.
We're Poppin the Scary horror podcast here. I'm your host Coale, and with me as always, I have my good friend and co-host Aaron. Aaron, hi bud, what up? It's already October. How about that?
October! Yeah, it was always so nice rolling up to the studio at Cole's house and seeing all the decorations.
Yes,
It's Halloween time.
It was unfortunately pretty gosh darn hot yesterday whenever I was putting it up, and I'm like, you would not think it is October given how much I am perspiring out here.
Yeah, it's been a little bit scorching out here. But...
Yep, definitely a good month for horror there, and good to follow Dave's recommendation from last episode, which if you haven't checked out, definitely implore you to check it out there, because today's episode is going to be focusing on the autopsy of Jane Doe. And so I know we talked about it just a teensy bit towards the end of last episode, but do you know anything about this movie at all? Name, title, or anything? Gotcha.
No. I know it's a little bit more recent. I think I remember, not like recent, but at least... Not like an older movie, like we were alive when it came out, right? It's 2000-something.
2016.
Right? That's the one, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I remember seeing, like, trailers for it or something, but I don't really know what it's about. I don't really know anything about it, so...
Yeah, I honestly don't know too much about it there. Either I had heard about it before, people talked pretty good about it from what I heard there. I even borrowed a copy from my friend Randy and everything, so... Nice. I'm kind of going in with zero expectations there, but I am excited to check it out there. It's always fun to kind of get blind recommendations for something you don't know anything about, or anything else like that. So
that's my whole experience on this podcast.
For the most part, there's been a couple exceptions.
That's true.
A couple, but you're right, very few and far between for you. But yeah, I wish I knew what more to add to the intro, but really I don't, so we're just going to be right back after we check out the autopsy of Jane Doe.
Jane Doe.
Jane Doe. And we are back from watching the autopsy of Jane Doe, and whoa, am I right?
Whoa, Miss Doe. Calm down.
Yeah, I was, I should have been more prepared, I think, than what I was actually prepared for this film, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because, I mean, I don't know about you, but, well, I know about me. Let's hear what you have to say about initial thoughts and feelings.
Initial thoughts? Yeah, spooky, macabre, when with the title Autopsy of Jane Doe, I guess I wasn't sure if it was actually going to be just lengthy autopsy scenes. I mean, I guess I should have expected that. Most of this movie is autopsies. So there's a lot of uncomfortable bits just by the nature of cutting in and stuff. But the movie definitely takes a turn for the horror, and not just, watching dead people get cut up. So I mean, I thought it was interesting. It was engaging. I thought maybe the plot was a little too, like, once you get what's happening, like, you kind of figure out the whole movie. But still, it was it was definitely one of the... It's been a while since we've watched a movie where we're just, like, yelling at the screen, you know what I mean? So, it was definitely one of those where we're like, what are you doing? Why would you do that? You know what I mean? But it wasn't necessarily, like, even in a, well, I would never do that kind of way, or like, what is this guy thinking? It was just like, no, don't go down the stairs,
Yeah, that's something I could definitely agree with. There is we definitely were. This is like one of the most audible films where we just were yelling our gut reactions. But Aaron's right in the sense that it wasn't so much of like, oh my god, they're so stupid going down there, but it's just the fact that you're like, I'd be noping out of there immediately.
Yeah.
Not even curious or anything like that. I'm just like, nuh-uh, nuh-uh. And just pretty much noping out of there. That would be like sort of the way I would go about it. But yeah, basically you did touch on the idea again, which we haven't really discussed too much, which is morgues in general, kind of like, or dealing with autopsies there, because I don't know about you, whenever it comes to horror and stuff, whenever it comes to like watching surgeries, I know people find that interesting and everything else. Me, I'm like, nah. Give me the silly, brutal kills of like Mortal Kombat or like anything like that, where it's so like obscenely over the top there.
Yeah.
But whenever it gets very scientific like that, it definitely was like, okay.
Oh yeah, I can watch somebody get hit in the head with a sledgehammer, but if you make me watch a scalpel go into somebody, I quease up.
Yeah, so it is definitely kind of interesting to bring a different type of horror to something like this, but the thing again that I appreciate about this film, since we're on the subject of it anyhow, is the fact that I don't feel like they ever do it to be like, man, gross out or anything like that. I feel like they keep it very scientific, which I have to give kudos to, because I feel like it just makes it even more kind of serious and horrific.
Oh yeah.
So I think just having that restraint of trying not to gross out the audience too much there, I think definitely sells the believability of the situation.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think this is a great example of a film that like pretty naturally puts in a lot of gore, I guess, quote unquote, and a lot of nudity without it seeming like exploitation, without it seeming like, oh, you want to see this shit. It's like, well, I guess you kind of have to be watching this if we're watching a movie about an autopsy. Yeah, there's a naked woman on a table for most of the scenes, so it makes sense that there's just boobies. But it wasn't just like, hey, look at all these boobies. It was like, all right, we're slicing this woman open. And it wasn't like, hey, look at us slice a body open. It was like, that's how you do autopsies,
Yeah, and I think definitely exploitation is something that's used a lot in horror, and so the fact that I felt like this film never once exploited like the billions of times it could have, it just never did. And it's one of those things that I think, like, instead of like going over the top with the horror, because they restrain themselves there, it just heightens the overall experience. So and I guess I know we're already talking ideas and everything, but just to give a quick overview of the plot of the film. Basically, the film opens up with a crime scene that cops are discovering whenever they find this body that's been buried in like the basement area. And so they bring it over to the local morgue, which is ran by Tommy and his son Austin, where basically the sheriff needs to figure out what was the cause of death for this body, since there was like no clear signs as to what killed her. And so he needs it by midnight because the news is wanting to hear about what happened to the body. So they're on a timer. Little do they know, and more do they know. So it's very interesting how both those aspects work. And I feel like whenever it comes to plot points, it's pretty straightforward, and I like it. I definitely appreciate how they didn't try to overcomplicate the plot. They just said it's people discovering a body, and once they discover more of the secrets, more things start to occur.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they do kind of try to slide in a few side plots and some like background info as the movie goes on, like, oh, there's a girlfriend, and the son was gonna try to quit this job, but it's been 2 years and he haven't, and like all this kind of like layering info that I felt like was kind of unnecessary, because the film was already like, the premise was interesting enough, and I was focused on like, even before some of the spooky stuff started happening, it was just like, all right, the murder mystery, what is this woman doing here, what's her deal, all the weird things that they're finding during the autopsy. And I didn't have to be bored down with like, well, your mother died when you were young, and that was my fault too, like,
while the main plot, I would say, is completely sound and works, the side plots they try to throw in, I feel like they're doing it to try to build up the characters, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
I definitely appreciate, because I never felt like either of the two main leads were ever like boring or I wasn't invested in them. But that just has to have kudos to Brian Cox and Emil Hirsch, who really do an excellent job in the film. But yeah, I feel like the side plots that I don't necessarily think they fall completely flat. It makes the film kind of feel a little bloated.
They do, yeah. They feel shoehorned in a little bit. The side plots, like, oh, we got to make these characters more dynamic and interesting. And like, yeah, again, I'm with you on the same page. I appreciate that effort, but I felt like that was just really like, yeah, whatever, compared to the main plot of the film.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, overall, main plot good. Side plots, a little unnecessary. It kind of felt a little bit, but still completely fine there. But let's talk about some of the lead actors, which, you know, this might be one of the smallest cast we've seen in a horror film, which again,
True.
I don't feel like that hurts it at all. In fact, I think that just allows them to be as strong as they are. Without the side plots trying their best to build him up even more. But we have Brian Cox back as Tommy, and I honestly didn't even know we had watched a film with him already for the podcast, but he played Mr. Krieg in Trick or Treat, the school bus driver.
Okay.
And yeah, he does a very good job. He's very good at being likable and believable as kind of the dad. You never feel like he's overbearing or like a jerk or anything. He has a couple of moments where you see he has like a funny side to doing stuff and everything, and so his sort of like charisma and everything is definitely well needed for the film there, because you naturally bond to him as a character. Now, will I say like he's as deeply complex as characters we've seen on this podcast? Not necessarily, especially even though they did try to give the subplot about like losing his wife previously and that stuff, and that's whenever I started kind of zoning out a little bit there. It didn't lose me completely. It wasn't like, why are you talking about this? But it definitely was nice to see such a strong performance there from him, as well as Emil Hirsch. I feel like both of them, they had good chemistry with one another, and they were able to bounce stuff back and forth from each other.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think they nailed that sort of father-son dynamic of, like, you know, the son picking up the trade of the father but, you know, learning lessons. And there's always that awkward dynamic when, like, your dad is also your teacher, you know, and, like, but they're navigating through some things, and he's too nervous to tell him that I want to move away with my girlfriend or whatever, you know, and not mess with dead bodies all day, but even though it's the family biz. So yeah, I thought it was cool. I thought they worked really well together, and that's, you know, important since, you know, the majority of this movie is them two in a room with a corpse. So
yeah, it's definitely important that if you're going to have a film like this, your actors are very strong and have that sort of performance that makes you want to connect with them and you're okay with watching, because you're stuck with them the entire film. So it's very fortunate for us as viewers that they were very enjoyable to watch there. Emil is especially good at the fact of, like, you could tell he really loves and cares about his dad and everything, and he does care enough about his job, even though he is wanting to move away from the business, as we figure out at the beginning of the film. Which, you know, let me just mention this. I appreciate them getting that out of the way, as opposed to like the usual trope of like seeing like it later on and then be like, I never wanted to be part of this business or whatever, having like a big dramatic like blow up. I have to give, again, major kudos that they didn't take that route there. It's like they mention it, and so you know about it, and you know how he feels. But while the subplot, I would say, doesn't add up too much there, I'm also kind of glad that they didn't do the whole dance about thing, because that's the surprising thing with them. They don't have too many arguments in the film there. Which I'm not complaining about. In all honesty, anytime people start to argue, it feels like unnecessary, and again, it just seems dumb, basically, to have that added drama just to heighten the sense of tension and everything.
Yeah, I definitely understand it in some films, but I see what you're saying, that like it's not a necessary version of conflict whenever you have like somebody that's killing people, you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
You think they'd be unified behind that front, but Like, I at the same time, I get it. Like, panic situations, some people are fighting, some people are fighting, you know, and it doesn't always mesh with a good teamwork. But these guys, this father-son duo, man, they've been teaming together for their whole careers, bro. So they know how to handle a little bit of spookiness in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I think definitely being a mortician of sorts, you have to be like of a certain personality, especially when dealing with something grim.
Yeah.
And so like even just the intro of seeing them like work on a body earlier and they're like blasting out rock music, and again you feel like they're not necessarily being disrespectful, but they're like going through the motions. And so you kind of get to see their teamwork early, and so whenever they have to keep teaming up together as they're unraveling this mystery, I really like it a ton.
Yeah.
They definitely make a good duo. However, this will play to plot points later. The one other criticism I would say about this film is they tend to jump to these conclusions a little unnaturally, or these theories, like these ideas. Because there's a couple of points whenever they're like trying to pitch exactly, you know, what happened to Jane Doe and everything, where I'm like, that was kind of a stretch there a little bit. No, there wasn't like a natural like build up and everything. I mean, granted, I appreciate that it's not like, oh my gosh, like it's spelled out for you, you know, just say it. But I don't know. I think whenever it comes to mysteries, you have to be very like, basically with mysteries, it's hard to come up with a good one there, where it feels like you're not spoon feeding the audience, but also jumping to crazy conclusions that no person in their right mind would ever come to.
It's definitely a delicate balance to like give them enough clues that they could perceivably find out what happens, but not like, you know, just show it to them so there's no mystery at all.
Yeah.
It's definitely hard to strike, but...
Yeah, but I feel like, you know, for the most part, the film does a good job leading to natural conclusions, even if a couple of them are like, okay, that was a bit of a reach there. But it wasn't like completely out of the blue, no way in a billion years you could guess it. So I definitely have to applaud them with that. That was a random point that jumped up. But with the other characters, there's not too many to talk about. There is the girlfriend, Emma, played by Ophelia Lovibond. And I feel like for little screen time as she gets, because, you know, she leaves as soon as Jane Doe appears, she does fine. She does fine. I will say she is definitely more... I'm trying to think, is ostentatious the right word? I tend to use big words that I end up butchering the definition of. Let's see. Definition.
Nope!
Ostentatious is not the word. Put a big X on there. Basically... a wildfire, like a Spitfire. She is just kind of like jump scaring her boyfriend and everything there.
I wouldn't jump scare anyone in a morgue past the age of 13 or something. I think I'd be like, this is probably not the place to pull a prank. But... Yeah,
and so there was like a couple of times, but I mean, for what it is, it's fine, you know, there. And I feel like she's fine. She definitely doesn't have a lot to go off on the script there, and so I feel like the actress is giving it her all to deliver it. In that regard, I feel like she does perfectly fine, as well as the sheriff, who, you know, we see at the beginning of the film, Sheriff Burke, played by Michael McElhatton. And again, I feel like he's even has less to work with. Like, he's just your typical sheriff going through
he's a little
protocol. But again, I feel like that's not the point of the film. The point of the film is to focus on the father and son duo there. So,
and the corpse.
Yes, Jane Doe, played by Olwen Catherine Kelly there. And
that's honestly like, okay, she's a corpse, you know what I mean? But she's a corpse through the whole movie. I'm sure she was laying on that cold metal bench, fully as naked, in front of a crew of people for multiple hours a day. That's gotta be tough.
Yeah, no, it is.
That's actually, honestly, big kudos to her, because she was a believable corpse. I never saw her breathing, you know?
Yeah.
Good job.
Yes, very good job on that regard as well. I feel like it's definitely one of those things that's like, she has the least amount to do, but
you have to be really good at doing it.
Yes, you have to be good at
she has
acting
like
like
a fly
her dad.
crawl out of her nose and like land on her eye at one point. I don't know. I mean, surely some of that special effects, but like blood running, getting cut up. I mean, like you gotta, you know. It's gotta be hard to like just not be twitching or some shit whenever that's happening.
Yeah, I'd be curious on how much of it was actually her versus like special, prosthetics or something like that. I'd be curious to find out because I think it's definitely a thankless job, but a necessary one, and it is funny because we cut to the body multiple times. And every time you cut to it, you expect it to look different, act different, or anything, but no, it's just the exact same thing. And I think again that just heightens it. So I think definitely for her, it's definitely an important role, as silly as it sounds there for the actress. So it definitely should not be overlooked. So major kudos to Olwen for being a real trooper. I'm trying to think. Whenever it comes to the film, there's not too many things to talk about without spoiling there. One thing I will say, we mentioned prosthetics. Good golly gosh, yep. Seeing them like scientifically like cut into her to dissect and figure out cause of death and everything, and looking at everything else, definitely was disturbing. And just seeing them go through kind of the motions of it, I felt the dread add on more and more as more mysterious things kept being revealed to the both of them. And I thought that was an interesting I felt like that was an interesting type of horror there, where nothing's really going on. It's just the normal motions and everything, but I just felt that tension build up more and more and more and more. And then, by the end of the film, the water's definitely boiling. Yeah. So I will say this film definitely gave me the willies more than most films have recently.
Yeah, it's really good at doing what I assume it's trying to do is build suspense and be just fucking eerie. It's a very sort of creepy film, and you just feel that ramp through the whole movie.
And the thing I do have to applaud it is none of it felt cheap for the most part. It felt like genuine scares, like the tension and everything. Not a lot of jump scares too much. There was a few, but not as many as what you could expect from a film like this.
I feel like you know when they're coming.
Yes.
like you could like, all right, the jump scare's coming, and then there it is. Like, it doesn't, if it's trying to surprise you with them, it doesn't do a great job, but it does kind of like almost buffer it. Like, all right, he's looking through a small hole here. You can tell there's probably gonna be something that appears.
Yes, it gives the audience time to prepare with the jump scares, which, some people may think that's like lame, but for me, I feel like it's just more like, okay, we're doing this jump scare. As a heads up, get ready.
Right. It doesn't. I feel like it doesn't, pull the rug out from under the audience. But that being said, I feel like this movie probably does, maybe buffer a little too much. Like, I feel like they lay things out in the beginning of the movie that you just know are gonna come up later.
Yeah.
And it's like whenever you're like walking through a room in a video game and like the certain items just like light up with a border around them or something, or like when you're watching a Scooby-Doo cartoon and some of the panels are painted a different color. It's like, yeah, okay, I know this is happening. Like it was pretty obvious, but so like that's something I would dock points from this movie for. But I would at the same time like give it credit for, despite kind of knowing almost exactly how this movie was going to go by like the 15-minute mark or some shit, like it still kept my interest really solidly throughout the whole thing.
And I think that's really hard to do, like for a plot that can be deemed as predictable, like, okay, they're going to get to this, then they realize this and that. I think it's hard to be predictable, but still very enjoyable. Right. And I think you're definitely right, Aaron. I think this film does that very successfully.
Yeah, especially for like a suspense film and like kind of a mystery film where you're like, oh, what happened? Like if you know exactly what's going to happen in an action movie, like whatever, because who cares about the plot of Fast and Furious 25 or whatever? Like, I know they're going to jump a plane out of a helicopter and explode. I don't care. But like that's what I'm here for, you know what I mean? So, but to do that with a suspense film where you're like, what's gonna happen, and like, okay, I know what's gonna happen, but I'm still like scared to see it, you know what I mean? Is yeah, much to its credit.
Yeah, and definitely I feel like because of all that stuff, like the predictability, I feel like kind of with the amount of tension I was feeling, the predictability was kind of nice to have as a guardrail, I suppose, where I don't feel like I'm getting like, disoriented, where I'm like, I don't even know what's going on with this film. It's going all over the place.
Sure.
Because I feel like I've seen films where they're just very like, I don't know what's going to happen because the plot is just doing loop-de-loops and everything, and the scares are popping out, and it just builds a level of feeling disorienting. So I honestly feel like the predictability, as you said, works out good for this film. It definitely has some grim moments. I will give a warning without spoiling exactly what happens, but all you animal lovers out there, if you watch this film, just be prepared, because there is one scene. I feel like they did it as tastefully as they possibly could. But still, I was like, oh my god, Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, Aaron and I were definitely kind of wincing. That we definitely winced and squirmed a lot during this film and everything.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even so much at the gore as it was the tension, which again, I think it is pretty rare, because I felt like a lot of films we've seen that have tried to add tension and everything were usually just pretty quiet, but this was very audible. And so I honestly kind of enjoyed that factor, that we were just both like I had another Nope experience, because I was like, nope, nope, just
Nope.
immediately the scenarios they set up throughout the film, it's like, nope. But I feel like it was a good nope, so that's, again, real nice they did that. I will say the only other thing I would mention is, as soon as the mystery starts to unravel and you kind of realize there's more afoot than just a regular corpse in the morgue, it does raise questions, but I feel like whenever you start getting to kind of supernatural levels, it kind of blends the rules on like what they can or can't do and what it means and what it doesn't mean. Because there's definitely some moments that I'm like, oh wow, that happened. And it's like, it feels a little, I don't want to say cheap. It just is like kind of came out of left field for me.
There are definitely a few things I'm going to bring up in spoilers that were like, how did that happen?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't, even within like the rules, quote unquote, that are like set up in this universe, like, how did they manage to do this?
Yes, that is exactly what I'm talking about. Because there's moments where I'm like, I feel like this is good. I felt like they kind of jumped over a few leaps there in order to get to that point.
Kind of like zoomed out script writing. They were like, this needs to happen, so we're just gonna slide it right here. You know what I mean? And like not explain it.
That being said, however, this film's about an hour and 40 minutes long, and so I felt like the length was good for the mystery. So I felt like if they did have to jump points to get there, I think it is worth the sacrifice in quality. It's just kind of a shame, I guess, because if they had drawn it out more and more, it could have started losing me potentially. I'm not sure if it would have, but I definitely felt like the length of the film was pretty good. Minus, again, whenever they do bring up the subplots every now and then, it does drag out just a teensy bit, but they immediately get back on the horse.
Yeah, there are definitely a few lulls where they're just like talking in a room somewhere, and I'm like, really? This is the most interesting thing you guys come up? Come on, speak it up.
Yeah. It is funny because a lot of points you brought up throughout the film, obviously they more lean towards spoilers and everything, but I did love your observations of like, the morgue's in a basement, lovely.
Yeah, right. The basement of a home, yes. Yeah, there's only one exit. Nothing could go wrong there. You know?
So yeah, it definitely adds to the predictability there, but it didn't hinder the quality of the film too much. One thing I will touch on lightly is the ending, because I do think it is important to talk about. Endings for movies like these, I feel like, are very difficult to be very satisfying. I feel like Because I feel like even though the film is predictable, I've seen multiple endings, like the way that it's done and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And as is, I will say the ending was a little, again, a little by the numbers, but at the same point, I was okay with it. So that's
Yeah.
the important thing, because I feel like sometimes they'll pull this sort of ending off, and I'm just like, I feel like I got ripped off, like with
True.
the mystery was just better than the actual kind of,
like the resolution.
yeah, the resolution. But I felt like with the resolution, while I wouldn't say it's like, oh, perfect masterpiece and everything, I still thought it was fairly fine.
I felt like the writers probably slapped up a few endings on the wall and were like, this is the one that's like neutral. This is the one that like people are fine with. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think this one's gonna like make anybody bust their nut, but they're probably it's probably not gonna make anybody be like, what the fuck either. So they're like, well, let's just pick this. This is like the Marvel Cinematic Universe ending. Let's just click it. Nick Fury pops up after the credits, and he's like, Nick Fury will be Jane 2 or whatever. In the autopsy of Jane Doe the Second.
Dose.
Jane
Dose.
Jane Dose.
Yeah, definitely so. Yeah, even though it is, like you said, kind of the more generic ending and everything, I still felt like it was perfectly fine, and I feel like it's the safe route.
Right. That's exactly what I mean.
Yeah,
I feel like they picked like,
exactly.
this is the safe ending. Yeah.
Aside from that, I know we talked a little bit about prosthetics and everything there, but yeah, I felt like they did make it look very realistic.
Yeah.
There, so even with the other corpses they showed in the morgue and everything there, it was definitely like, man, this is a little gnarly to look at, but again, I never felt like it was exploitative. And then especially since you're digging around the chest cavity of Jane Doe, just seeing the organs and everything, I'm like, and especially looking at the stomach and everything.
Yeah,
that was,
oh dude, what got me is they have a couple of these scenes where they're like crunching through the ribs.
oh my gosh,
with,
yes,
like,
I forgot. Oh my god,
with like gardener shears, like just like it's
oh
like,
my gosh,
that was like, oh Jesus Christ, hard to watch. But
yeah, that, or anytime they peel back the skin or anything, yeah. Oh, but yeah, it was definitely pretty gnarly to watch. Without spoiling anything for anybody, just for initial thoughts so people could stay tuned for the spoilers. Whenever they figure out the mystery behind Jane Doe, not so much like how the movie ends, how did you feel about the mystery being revealed about Jane Doe?
I was like, yeah, checks out. You know what I mean? It didn't like blow my brains, but I was like, you know, in the first like 20 minutes of the movie or something, I was like, I have a general idea of what's going on. Just like the specific kind of spooky wasn't nailed down yet. And they just kind of, I felt like it just checked a box. They were like, you know, there's like 5 different kinds of spooky this could be. Which one is it? And it was like, oh, it's this one? Okay, great. Neat. I wasn't like, wow, that's interesting. It was like, it was almost sort of, I don't know, it's almost sort of genre. It was almost sort of like, yeah, like this, you guys know about this shit, right? Like, I don't want to say what it is because I don't want to spoil it for everybody, but it's like, it's one of those things where like, oh yeah, of course, that would explain it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's already in our collective consciousness. We know about this thing, so like, sure, that would explain what's going on here.
Yeah.
But I felt like the explanation almost was like far less interesting than them uncovering the details. You know what I mean?
You know, I would actually agree with that. Whenever it came to the mystery being like revealed and everything to them, I was like, oh, okay, you know, cool,
right?
You know,
neat.
yeah, like, but it never, and I think that
I wasn't like, whoa, you know?
Yeah, but it also wasn't terrible either,
No,
which is good. I
Mhm.
felt like it was a good, you know, like, good explanation as to what killed Jane Doe, basically. And so I think, like, again, it's hard to do like a mystery to where it's just very hard, period, I would basically say. And I feel like for the most part, while I wouldn't say it just like jumped and shocked and amazed. It was like really good and solid throughout. Like I was just like, okay, yep, okay. And so yeah, it was awesome. Aside from that, anything else you would add before jumping into spoilers, Aaron?
I don't think so. I mean, often we touch on like editing, cinematography, sound design, all that kind of stuff. I don't think anything really stood out for good or for bad in those departments. There were a couple shots where I was like, oh, that's neat, but like, there's nothing that was like, oh, there's this great oneer they did where it was followed around the body and oh man, that shot of the feet at the end, I just love a good feet shot. My name's Quentin Tarantino, there's nothing that was just like, oh, that was amazing. So I don't think any of that's super remarkable on my part. But
well, you did mention sound. The crunching bones and the sounds they did made were pretty.
It blends in pretty good.
Yes,
and there is. I don't even think I can even mention the specific sound, but there is like a sound they use as a cue for like something spooky coming that they start to lace in the movie, and I thought that was well done from like a script writing standpoint. But
yeah, I do think that's good. Cinematography is kind of hit or miss for the most part. I felt like the morgue, whenever they're focusing on Jane Doe and everything, that was like some of the best cinematography because it's the most important, scene basically. But another thing is whenever they show kind of certain shots, like they're like, okay, remember the layout of this hallway and everything that's there because that's going to pop up later.
I think they do a good job of setting that kind of stuff in the beginning. Just like a general, like, here's what the space that is going to get spooky looks like so you guys know. And then it gets spooky, you know what I mean?
So I think that's definitely good for them as well, that they do explore the space ahead of time and during whenever things are afoot basically. So that's also another thing, but yeah, so overall I think with editing and stuff I felt like it was perfectly fine. There's sometimes a couple of shots where I did feel like it's a little messy and cheap and thing, but it really wasn't that bad. So Aaron, how's about we go and talk about your rating for the Autopsy of Jane Doe?
The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Man, usually this is the part where I give like a brief synopsis of all the things I just talked about, but man, we just talked about them. I'm not even you guys were listening, right? I mean, yeah, like everything, like my overall impression of this film is that it's from a zoomed out lens, like if I'm telling somebody about it later, like I am right now to you guys, it's pretty good. It's a lot of the decisions they made was like palatable. It's like not gonna amaze you, but it's like a pop culture ass horror movie. You know what I mean? They were like, people aren't gonna be turned off by this, but they're also not gonna come their little pants. So that's where I'm at. It was pretty good. They didn't take those risks and stuff with like creative storytelling or creative this or that or the other to like really make this a cemented film in the history of horror cinema, but they also just didn't make a lot of bad decisions. They played pretty safe. The plot was pretty linear. It was whatever, you know what I mean? So overall, the things I would dock it for, we'll talk more about in spoilers for the most part, because there's a lot of just like, excuse me parts, you know? But I feel like with the script they were given, with the premise they were given, they had a really solid idea in mind, and they kind of nailed it in a safe way. So, I don't know, this is like a 7 for me. It's like a 7 out of 10. It's definitely an above average film. They do a lot of things right. It's a very enjoyable and suspenseful and interesting film. It's just like whenever you dive into the little pieces of it, those little pieces end up kind of being bland. But overall, the plot, the actual mystery behind it is it's really good. So 7 out of 10 for me.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's funny because ditto with me. Yeah. I would also rate it a 7 out of 10. I mean, it's just like you said. I felt like while it doesn't do anything too groundbreaking per se, they do have a couple of moments of like, man, that was really well done and everything. And not to mention, there's not too many morgue horror films.
True.
So definitely I feel like it's not quite as explored niche of horror there. Like I said, the only other series I could think of that even has remotely any sort of morgue horror to it is the Haunting of Hill House Netflix series, which the first season I've only seen, but it's pretty good. Definitely, I would say, definitely takes it. I don't know why in the world I'm giving my review of The Haunting of Hill House there, but there's a couple of moments that still rattle me to my bones this very day because of just how creative and horrific it is there. This film doesn't necessarily do that, but has a lot of good tension, has a lot of good horror. Again, Emile Hirsch and Brian Cox do excellent jobs, with being likable characters you're okay with since you're stuck with them and Jane Doe, the dead body. I think it's definitely a film that, if you're looking for something, nothing too crazily complicated or anything like that, but just a good solid horror film, yeah, I think this would definitely hit the books there. So I have to give Dave my thanks to this recommendation because, yeah, I see exactly why people like it a ton there. Not a new favorite, but I definitely did like it a ton.
Yeah.
Nice. So, yeah, definitely go check it out. I know that I believe it's on Hulu right now, and I think Tubi. So, in case you need a good horror film for October, this will do the trick. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with how pretty solid it is.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, without further ado, let's talk about the autopsy of Jane Doe. Spoilers.
Spoiler time.
Yeah.
Well, let's start with the deaths by order of importance.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, that cat, I guess.
Stanley, right?
Stanley the cat.
Yeah, that might have been the hardest scene to watch for me. Yeah. And I'm not even like a big animal lover like my wife is. But yeah, that was something like whenever the cat was there, I was like, I'm worried about this cat's life.
Yeah.
As soon as they like show him at the beginning, because they give a couple of Stanley moments there, either him dropping a dead rat as a gift, or him just scaring Brian Cox,
right,
sitting behind.
But yeah, that's like the first sort of tangible sign that something's wrong. You know what I mean? Catch people up to speed in case you're listening to spoilers, despite not having seen the movie. I mean, basically, they get Jane Doe in, they're slicing her up, there's like weird little bumps, and the lights are kind of going on a little bit as they continue through the autopsy. And at one point, he is like checking out a noise or some shit that he finds in the office, and there's a noise in the vent, and he opens up the vent, and something spooks him, and he falls down, and then his dad comes in and is like, "What the fuck are you doing, kid?" And he's like, something in the vent. And so Dad gets a flashlight and they shine it in there, and boom, dead Stanley. We don't really know what happened to him. We just know that Jane Doe killed him somehow. Because he was sniffing where he shouldn't have been or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and it was, and I think, like, again, it's hard whenever you show kind of like an animal getting hurt, which again, I don't know. I have mixed feelings on whenever it comes to it. I mean, I definitely am not like, oh yeah, animals getting messed up and everything. But I feel like sometimes like they again go over the top, but I felt like for the most part it was fairly tasteful in things.
Yeah.
They didn't really show him mangled up, but they definitely showed he was not doing well.
Yeah, they definitely showed some like blood, and he was obviously injured physically by something in the vents. Must have been a big ass rat.
Yeah.
But and then they just cremate that sucker. But it's sad. I do think there's some sort of like storytelling precedent to like animals are like omens, of bad things to come, and when the cat dies, it's like, oh, this is a bad thing to come. So I feel like especially since you kind of find out later that there's witchcraft involved and stuff, the appearance of animal omens is not like too off brand. But at the same time, it did kind of leave me wondering, even at the end of the film, like, why'd she kill the cat? Why'd she kill the cat? I understand why she's killing all the people. Why is she killing the cat? Yeah,
definitely kind of a surprise on killing animals there. The only, and I'm sure you're aware of this, I think the only reason why the cat died was so they could bring the dead wife back, because Brian Cox had that whole thing of, like, that cat was the last thing I had to remember her by and everything. So it's just, like, him losing something because it's emotional. I will say it was pretty dadgum brutal because, like, they're like trying to cradle Stanley and everything, take care of it, but it's at the point where there's nothing they could do to save him, so then he just breaks his neck.
Yeah, that seemed a little like, wow, but it was also at the same time like, I get it, these are like cold sciencey type people that are like, dealing with dead bodies all day. I'm sure it's not.
Yeah.
It's not that most unusual thing for this old professional to just be like, well, we got to kill the cat now.
Yeah. I could tell you right now, my wife would have wanted Brian Cox to die after that moment. Just being like, I hope he dies. Even.
Yeah. Surely in a morgue you have some other humane ways to put down a cat, but maybe I did. Maybe they don't.
Yeah, for sure. But again, that's not a reason why we talked boys per se. But I think that was the most shocking moment of like, oh Jesus. And then they cremate the cat and everything, being respectful, and it's just like, I need a moment, which I thought was nice. Again, it's better to just be like tossing it in a dumpster or something like that.
Yeah, well, get another one.
Yeah, whatever. It's fine. We'll get another one after we finish this autopsy. I definitely like how there was a gravity to that situation, a slow down where they really. I didn't feel like they were trying to rush that past that moment, but I also didn't feel like the filmmakers were trying to rub this moment in our face either.
Yeah, I do feel like it was an appropriate amount of time to kind of weigh in on it, and it kind of replaced like the first survivor dying in a movie, in a typical horror movie, because there's only 2 of them, so they couldn't just like be killing people left and right. But it was like, they were the first victim of something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Definitely true. Just kind of got the audience ready for the carnage to come, and I guess also the girlfriend died, which was whack.
Yeah, that's the next death I was gonna bring up and be like, bro. Why? How'd she even get down there?
Yeah, that's what I want to know. That one was one of the things that I'm like, I get it. It feels a little cheap though, a tiny bit. I mean, because
like that point in the movie, they already were like, all right, fuck this, let's get out of here. They tried to leave on the one exit, and they were like, oh, a tree fell on it. I guess we can't leave. And then, like many scenes pass, and then the girlfriend is just there somehow, and they axe her in the face because they mistake her for a body.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I'm bothered by. So the only thing I could think of, because I'm having to like piece my things together, is the fact that he said we can go to a late night showing at 11 o'clock or whatever, and she's coming back to get ready for the date and everything. And then for some reason, I guess Jane Doe leaves the window of time because I guess she wants all of them to suffer as much as possible because, spoiler alert, she's a witch, or got turned into a witch.
And she's still alive the whole time.
And so I'm guessing there was enough time for her to leave the power on, or the storm that has a power on, and she's able to use the elevator normally and everything. And then I guess for some reason, instead of walking to the morgue, she's walking God knows where or something like that. Because that was the other thing too as well. Like clearly the audience saw that there was the corpse walking around with the face blown out and everything. And so we see that, and again the lights are flickering on and off there. And then whenever Brian Cox goes for the swing, oopsie doodle, it's the girlfriend and everything. But the only thing I could think of, it's like either A, she just managed to run up and the other corpse fell back. And whack, or 2, they were hallucinating that it was the corpse and none of them were actually moving. But then you look at a lot of the stuff again, it's like that. It's that problem of what's reality and what isn't.
Right. Because there's definitely a few scenes like that. Like the first time he looks at that little hallway mirror and sees like a body or something standing there, and then he rounds the corner and it's not there anymore. It's like, okay, was he just seeing that, or was the body actually there? Like, there's precedent for, like, okay, later on in the movie, the bodies are actually there, so I would assume, but then you have shit like that, like, in the being in the smoke, where they're running through the cremation smoke, and there's just, like, faces all around them that they don't see, and, like, whatever the fuck attacked the dad in the bathroom, and then they ran in the bathroom, and nothing was there. So, like, unless this witch can also, like, let things go in and out of walls or something, which would make sense, but they just don't show that that's possible, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, what's happening exactly?
Yeah, it's always tough with films, because it's not like I expect the filmmakers to, like, be like, this witch can do these list of powers and everything.
Right.
But at the same point, whenever it gets to, like, the level of, like, okay, did this actually happen or it didn't? Because then it leads to confusion whenever it is like, oh, it's the girlfriend you killed accidentally, you know, or like what even hurt the cat, but that's even less so because the cat was always crawling around in the vents and everything. It just definitely kind of makes it a little more difficult determining like what's real and what's not.
Right. I feel like, I mean, in a suspense movie, you don't have to show everything, but I do feel like, yeah, in order for the audience to, like, know what's, you know, to not have this feeling that we're having right now, where we're like, okay, was that fake or not? Like, to ground it, like, yes, this actually happened, then, like, I feel like you have to show a little bit, you know what I mean? You have to show, like okay, the scene where they're walking through the cremation smoke and there's shit there, that's understandable to like why that's confusing and there's things that right or whatever. But then like the scene in the bathroom, like how did it get in there and how did it leave? Like I feel like you have to show it. Like if you're not going to show it go in there, you have to show it leave or something. You know, like the sun runs in and you see it just like run through the wall or something. That would have been so much scarier than just like, oh, what is here? You know, and then because then he turns the corner and the whatever what they were trying to block from getting in had opened the door, but then nothing came in. You know, it was just one of those things. It's like they gave you a lot of like stimulus, but then not like an explanation for what happened. Which you don't need, but it's going to leave us with these questions of like, okay, was any of this in their head, or was it all the witch? Because definitely some of it was the witch. Definitely some of it was the bodies, but like, was all of it? I don't know.
Yeah, that's the tricky, confusing thing on, you know,
because they do show her playing with their minds, like with the radio and everything, and then like at the very end where the son is running up because they hear the sheriff's voice outside or whatever, and then the voice slowly turns or whatever, and it was the witch the whole time. Like, okay, well, it's a witch playing tricks. That's cool. But then it really just detracts from, in my view, like from, okay, if I don't know if something happened or not, if it was in their head or if it actually happened, then that really just like lessens all the stakes for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It definitely brings you out of it a little bit there. And you know, even though there are like some fun scenes, like whenever they tried to set the witch on fire and everything there, which I thought, you know, as over the top as it was and kind of how it served more as a plot point of like, oh, they're deleting the evidence there so that way nobody finds out. It's still a fun scene. So I will say one scare, you mentioned this earlier that worked very well, is the tow bell and everything. And I bought the whole thing about it because, again, it's like Brian Cox is talking about. He's like, oh yeah, sometimes, you know, back then they weren't sure if bodies were actually dead, so they put a tow bell on it, so that way if they were alive you'd hear the bell ringing and everything and they know it's not dead. And it's like, why are you doing it now? It's like, I don't know, tradition. You know.
Yeah, definitely whenever that scene happened I was like, yep, there's gonna be some bodies walking around.
Yep. And it worked out good because every time we heard that bell, Aaron and I were like, oh no. I liked, even though it was really predictable, I liked the effect and how they used it, where it's like a dark hallway because all the power's out from the storm or whatever, and you just hear the bell getting closer. Yeah. I felt like that was a lot of fun. Seeing that, I always say he was probably my favorite corpse out of the bunch there.
The one with the bell,
yeah, the bell on a toe and the caved in face, which I'm surprised that we didn't get a gross out look of the caved in face there. Not that I wanted it per se, but I was surprised they didn't. Again, I'm just used to films trying to be like, oh, look how gross this is and everything.
They definitely showed a little bit of it, just with like, I think he was in that scene with the cremation smoke, and you could kind of see him wandering through. But like,
it was also the elevator scene whenever it's walking closer and closer. It shows.
Yeah, that was the one. Yeah, but they never just like straight up close up show you the caved in face.
Really, the only face we saw up close is the one with like the eyes and mouth sewn shut and everything, and then you see her like opening like it all up and the lace is getting tighter and ripping through skin. I'm like, even talking about it now I feel like a lump in my throat. So definitely good selection of bodies to kind of add to the horror and everything. I will say during that one scene whenever like the cremation furnace opens up and then they're like spewing ash clouds and everything, it was kind of like, that's a cool idea, but it's also a little goofy.
The special effects in that part were one of the weaker ones in the movie for sure, where they were just like faking that this room was filling with smoke at the beginning. It was like, All right. I see your After Effects solution here. Like,
Yeah. And then like whenever it came to all of the corpses attacking the dad, I did feel like it was kind of cheap because you don't see really what they're doing and everything. You just hear them go,
oh, goodness. Oh, I've fallen.
yeah, doing that. Not that I expected to see them do so much stuff, but it was just like, okay, wait, he's just clearly injured now.
Yeah, they're just like taking their time getting through this hallway, and then the son is like, "I'm gonna pick you up," and then walk through the door that's right here because it's like a 20-foot hallway. It's not like they're running through a football field.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely true. And I will mention other points like up to like this is like the big finale of them figuring out everything. I felt like they did all the stuff a normal person would do because like I said, they tried to escape, but the power's not working great on the elevator, trees falling over on the little basement doors and everything. They tried to call the police there, the phone line isn't going out, no bars, classic. Doing all that stuff. And so whenever you get to... Oh, that's the other thing as well. I have to compliment this film. I never felt like Brian Cox was deliberately like staying like it's like, oh, what are you doing? Get out of there.
Right. It was never like the son was like, "Police, we're gonna die." And he's like, "No, I have to do my job." You know.
Yeah, it never felt like it got to that point. It just because there was like a little like ominous stuff going on, but nothing concrete.
It wasn't until he was like attacked in the bathroom where he was like, "Yeah, there's no other explanation." He's like, "Yeah." And
yeah,
he's even like, the thing that attacked me had gray eyes or whatever, like Jane Doe. So like at that point, he was like, "Yeah, we're dealing in the realm of the impossible now."
Yeah, dude, and that was one scene that gutted me was this when the entire time you're getting major foreshadowing about the lights going out, and I liked that. I liked that, you know. Again, maybe it's just because like I feel like too many films get cheapened out where it's like, oh, the lights suddenly go out and everything. No,
right.
You could tell these lights are not in the greatest condition.
Yeah, it's an old ass family home, and they're talking about a big storm on the radio, and it's like, yeah, these lights are going.
And so whenever it goes out, it's like pitch black for what feels like an eternity, even though it's like probably 20 seconds, and you just hear noises and rattling and through glass and everything. That was a spooky freaking scene.
Yeah, where they're just in the room with Jane Doe, and then you just hear things, and the son's like, "What's happening?" You hear the dad like moaning and shit.
Yeah.
Then the lights come on, and they're just like both standing there, like,
You're like, yeah, we're leaving.
Yeah,
we are now leaving. So that's the other thing about this film that I do appreciate is that I feel like they're believable characters for the most part.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, whenever they start revealing the mystery and everything, I do feel like they have good hints at the beginning because like especially whenever it came to like looking through stuff, it's like, huh, that's weird. There's like this piece of like fabric string we found in her mouth and everything. She's missing a molar, and then she swallowed this orchid. One of my favorite things I saw that was like an early hint that was mysterious enough but also like, okay, what is this, is the peat moss underneath her fingernails and toenails. And they're saying that's weird, like unless it's like store-bought, you can only find it usually in the northern areas. You know, it's definitely not here. Like in this location. And then whenever it just starts putting the pieces together, like whenever they showed that fabric with like the runics and everything,
that was like in her intestines but not digested at all.
I did think it was a little silly that only the words Leviticus appeared after you folded it in half and everything, but it also didn't completely with me. I'm like, oh, that's stupid. It was just like, no, okay, sure. And so I do like the idea that it wasn't that she was innately evil, but instead they were trying to like basically get rid of her witchcraft ways and everything, but inadvertently created like, I don't know if she's technically deemed a witch or anything because of what they did, but she definitely has some sort of like otherworldly powers.
Yeah, that seems to be like what the characters imply, is that like, oh, like because the dad's like, no, there were no witches, they were all innocent, and then they were like, oh, but yeah, what if in the ritual they created the very thing they were trying to destroy or whatever. And it was like, okay, sure. What I thought happened before they started seeing like the runes in her stomach and all that shit whenever they were just like, wow, her eyes are gray. That usually only happens when they're dead for only a few hours or whatever. And then they cut into her and she's bleeding. They're like, I've only seen this with bodies that have only been dead for like an hour or whatever. I was the whole time, because they had already done the bell thing, I was like, she's alive. Like, she's alive and paralyzed, and at some point something's going to happen. But then they took out her heart, and I was like, okay, well, she's not alive anymore. They're probably just going to find out later that she was alive. But whenever they did like the runic thing, I was like, oh, okay, she's like a demon person or something. I don't know. But...
Yeah, and then the brain just confirmed, yep, still alive. Yep. and that's whenever the film just says, yep, this corpse is alive. Which, again, I'm going to be honest, I expected that corpse to jump up or do something.
I was waiting for that. Yeah, I was waiting for, like, whenever they first cut into her or something, for her to, like, move. Because there is one point where her nostril, like, flares.
Yes,
And I was like, she's alive, and she's going to, like, wake up mid-surgery or something, but...
Yeah, and I feel like it's one of those things that, yeah, it would be spooky, but I feel like it takes a lot more restraint to be like, no, we're going to hold off any big movement there. Because obviously it's only after basically everybody's dead and they take Jane Doe into the van and everything that you get that, you know, Quentin Tarantino shot there, you know, and it's wiggle your toe. And it does that. And I felt like that was well done and everything.
Yeah, and I do like how they got there, because like she's been dead for like 400 years or whatever, or suspended for like 400 years. But like they got there because the dad was like, "Don't hurt my son. Like, let me help you." And like she was like, "Sure," and like took his eyes and organs and everything with witchcraft or whatever. Like transferred all that shit to him and took his healthy shit. So then she was like a healthy paralyzed person or whatever. So like then I was like, that makes sense that she could then start having enough power to like move slightly at the very end.
Yeah, that was pretty creepy. And again, it's one of those things that those moments can be deemed kind of cheesy and predictable, but I wasn't necessarily expecting it, but it definitely made sense. And seeing him like get like his ankles and wrists shattered and getting all the damage that she had and everything, I was like, man, this is like brutal to watch and everything. And then just seeing her like slowly heal up and her like organs remetabolizing, getting rejuvenated, all the blood that drained from her going back in and everything. But again, she's still exactly a corpse and everything. I kind of expected her to move around, say something, do anything, but...
Yeah, I was expecting, like, maybe when the police came at the end, like, she was gone or something.
That's what I was expecting, too, but I felt like, again, like, her being a body and everything, I'm like, you know what? That's solid. I have to give kudos. I can't imagine how it was in the writing process, and it's like... And then she gets up, and it's like, I don't think so. Let's erase that, or whatever, like... You know, I think they had to redact that multiple times. And so I think the simple toe wiggle at the end gives enough confirmation and everything.
Yes. Even though it was, by the time she's loaded up in the van and you hear the radio turn and all that, I was like, yeah, like I knew this was going to happen.
Yeah. What I didn't expect to happen was with Emil Hirsch's character, because as soon as like he has to kill his dad because his dad is suffering and everything. Yeah, I was like, okay, he's probably going to prison, right?
Right.
He's going to prison. But no, he doesn't. They do like a wonderful psych out because they keep playing that one song on the radio. They played it like 2 times or something like that. And then like whenever he's trying to get out through like the basement door and everything, and you know, he hears like the sheriff's voice there, and then it's like, I can't hear you. He's like, I'm down here. And then he's singing that one song that played on the radio. As soon as that happened, I'm like, oh no.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then just seeing like his dead dad there, like as soon as he like braced his back against that railing, I'm like, he's going over.
Right.
He's going over. And then of course seeing his dead dad and everything just kind of sent him backwards. But again, even though I was expecting one of those things like, oh yeah, you say the body killed her. Where's the evidence? Like I was expecting that. Not that I wanted it to happen, but that's the motions I was going through. Again, probably one of the 5 endings you talked about they probably had. But I like the idea that all of them are dead, and they're just like, I don't know what happened. And it's like, do you think like one of them killed each other? He's like, no, I've known this family for decades. There's no way.
Yeah, because they did kind of look like the dad like maybe killed them all and then killed himself or something, because he was like standing there like with the scalpel in his hand in his heart or whatever.
I do like that. It just kind of was left of like, just get rid of this body. I don't want this here.
Right.
Like, I have nothing good attached to it. They couldn't even figure it out because there's like no evidence of anything.
Yeah, I did think it was a little corny how the evidence, like the camera, was destroyed.
A little bit, yeah.
Because it was just like caught fire and melted immediately and then fell to the ground. I was like, bro,
yeah, the only
cameras don't really catch fire. Like,
no, the only thing I have to go off of, it's magic.
Right,
you know,
it was the witch.
Yes, but I do agree.
Yeah.
It was definitely like, of course, the photo and cameras.
I would have almost been more satisfying for me if she just like poltergeisted the camera, just like threw it against the wall or whatever.
It's just randomly,
just like with telekinesis, just and it just shattered or whatever.
Yeah, just like
like maybe in that time when the lights go out or whatever, and because all the lights like explode or shit whenever they initially go out in that autopsy room.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe when the lights go out, that's one of the things that crashes or something, and they like get finally the power comes back on, and they like just see the camera just splatted against the wall.
Yeah,
because that was before they knew that the body was the witch or whatever, and they could just be like, "Did you do that?" And he's like, "No, I didn't do that." God damn it, Bobby! You know.
Yeah, that is true. Oh yeah, one last thing about the toe wiggle.
Toes.
I do like how they added that. I do.
Toes mentioned. I'm paying attention.
Okay. Have you seen this? This. Oh my god. Okay, I'm sorry. This is going off tangent. Have you seen like the evil Colonel Sanders be like?
No.
It's like, I'm trying to think. It's like evil Colonel Sanders be like Albuquerque boiled turkey. It's toe sucking awful. Anyways, that's just what I thought of, like, with toes. Now you have my attention.
Good.
I did like the bell sound effect at the end.
I kind of liked it, but also she didn't have a bell on her foot.
No, yeah, it's definitely. I think it's good
they
for
were just like adding it in post to be like, oh, remember, she's alive.
Yeah, but I think it also just harkens back to if they're alive, you hear the bell ring.
Yeah.
And so that's about the only thing. But yeah, I do get it.
I would have liked it better if she had a bell on her that would actually ring.
Yeah, but then again, it would have revealed to the driver, it's like, what the hell's that? Must have hit a bump.
I would have assumed that she, like, kills the driver or something shortly after
that is true.
clip ends, because she wiggles her toe and she's messing with the radio.
And I'm really surprised they didn't even show that at all.
Yeah.
They really, like, held themselves back from doing the obvious playouts there. So I think that's another reason why I give this film a lot of respect.
Right, well, because you got to end it at some point, you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
If she kills the driver, then what, do they show her walk away next? Or, like, what are, you know?
Yes,
so
exactly.
I'm glad they just give a little tease. So I'm talking about that Marvel cinematic ending. Like, ooh. Jane Doe's toe will be in the autopsy of Jane Doe.
Jane Doe's toe. Oh my god. Aside from that, buddy, anything else you want to talk about with this film?
Bruh, I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I mean, I mean, while I can't say it does, like, too many crazy things, and I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, it's a really good, solid film, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
It strives to not... It plays it safe in a lot of regards, but I feel like sometimes, even though playing it safe can be seen as a cop-out, I don't think it's a cop-out for this film. I think it helped keep it on track from detracting.
Yeah, it was on track. It was interesting through the whole track. The only two spots that I was like, all right, pick it up, was like in the beginning when he's talking to the girlfriend upstairs, and she's like, when are you going to tell your dad? And then whenever they're in the elevator, and he's like, oh, my dead wife, your mother. I failed you again, you know.
Yeah.
Those two scenes, I was like, yeah, a little melodramatic, but I mean the rest, yeah. I mean, I was on board.
Okay, awesome. Well, with that all said and done, I think we can zip the body bag up on this case and everything.
Just case closed.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about the next film we're going to be watching for our episode. Wait, for our podcast. I can't talk.
Podcast episode.
Yes. So for our next episode, we're going to be recording. It's a sequel.
A sequel.
A sequel.
Okay. A squeakle.
And it's And it's a franchise we always seem to visit in October.
Ooh, okay.
And this is the third one, and it came out in 1982.
Is this Halloween 3?
Yes, baby, it's
All right.
Halloween 3.
Halloween time.
I I'm sorry. As soon as I mentioned we're watching Halloween 3, you gave this face right here. You just gave this face of like,
It can't be any worse than the last two, right?
To be fair, you did like 2 a little bit better than
Yeah,
1,
I did like 2.
correct?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, so far it's moving up.
True. The needle's going up.
Yeah, if you look at that, so we'll have to see whether the trajectory keeps going up or tanks
Yeah.
for this episode that we're going to be recording next. So thank you all so much for listening to this episode, and we'll see you all again next time when we're popping the scary with Halloween 3 Season of the Witch.
Hey, more witches.
Yes, the witches are back.
Witch is back in town.
Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Castbox, or iTunes platforms to stay up to date when new episodes drop. To see what Aaron and I are up to, check out our respective Twitter accounts. For me, it is @ColeKirkVA, and for Aaron, it is @AnimalGameDev. Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. We'll speak to you all again next time when we're popping the scary.